The space remains in its established state. Nothing signals a beginning, and nothing suggests that anything has changed since the previous moment. The environment continues without interruption, maintaining the same measured balance between structure and absence. There is no indication that time has advanced. The conditions remain consistent, stable, and unaffected by observation. The surrounding surfaces hold their positions without adjustment. They do not shift or respond. Their presence does not invite inspection, nor do they resist it. They exist as they have, maintaining their relation to one another without variance. There is no sense of alignment or misalignment, only persistence. The air remains evenly distributed. It does not move with intention, nor does it react to presence. Its function is limited to sustaining the space in its current form. There is no sensation associated with it beyond the knowledge that it exists. Temperature remains constant. No currents form. Nothing changes. Light continues without emphasis. It neither brightens nor dims. There is no transition between illuminated and shadowed areas. The illumination does not suggest direction, depth, or distance. It simply allows the environment to remain visible without drawing attention to itself. The space does not respond to continued awareness. It does not adjust or recalibrate. It does not present new elements or withdraw existing ones. It remains consistent, holding its configuration without deviation. No part of the environment becomes more prominent than another. There is no sound that marks progression. Any presence of sound remains uniform and indistinct, offering no cue of movement or activity. It does not accumulate or disperse. It exists only as a constant condition, neither increasing nor diminishing. Surfaces maintain their position without change. No texture becomes more defined. No boundary asserts itself. The environment does not guide attention or direct focus. There is no invitation to explore or interpret. Everything remains as it is. The absence of variation allows perception to remain unengaged. Nothing requires analysis. Nothing demands recognition. The space does not attempt to communicate or conceal. It simply continues in the state it has already established. Time does not assert itself. There are no indicators of sequence or progression. The environment does not suggest duration. It exists without reference to before or after. The moment does not lead anywhere, and it does not resolve into anything else. The space remains stable. It does not anticipate change, and it does not resist it. It continues in a state of equilibrium, unaffected by presence or attention. There is no build-up, no release, and no transition. The environment sustains itself without interruption. Nothing within it moves toward a conclusion. Nothing begins. Nothing ends. The state remains intact, maintaining continuity without variation. The space persists exactly as it is. The environment maintains its condition without adjustment. No element within it reacts to duration or presence. The balance between surfaces, space, and air remains constant, unaffected by continued observation. Nothing accumulates, and nothing fades. The environment does not respond to attention, nor does it withdraw from it. There is no indication of sequence or progression. The space does not guide awareness forward or backward. It does not suggest movement or stillness as separate states. Both exist simultaneously, without contrast or hierarchy. The environment remains neutral in all directions. The boundaries do not define themselves through contrast. They do not assert form or function. Their persistence is uniform, without variation or emphasis. No section of the space draws focus more than another. There is no center, and no periphery. The air maintains its equilibrium. It does not circulate in a way that can be perceived. There is no sensation of flow or resistance. It supports the continuity of the environment without calling attention to itself. The presence of air is implied rather than felt. Sound remains present only as a constant baseline. It does not rise or fall. It does not indicate activity or rest. It does not form patterns or cycles. It exists as an unchanging condition, maintaining consistency without interruption. The environment does not respond to prolonged awareness. It does not adapt, evolve, or reveal additional layers. What is present remains present. What is absent remains absent. No distinction becomes clearer with time. There is no movement toward resolution. No threshold approaches. The space does not signal completion or transition. It continues as it is, maintaining equilibrium without effort or intention. The continuity remains intact. Nothing shifts, and nothing needs to. The state persists, unchanged, holding its form without direction or conclusion. The environment remains stable as the previous condition continues without alteration. No shift occurs at the point of transition. The space does not acknowledge the passage from one segment to the next. It persists as a single, uninterrupted state, unchanged by duration or repetition. The surrounding structure maintains its form without adjustment. There is no expansion or contraction, no response to prolonged presence. The surfaces do not reveal new qualities over time. They remain constant, neither absorbing attention nor repelling it. Their function is simply to remain. The air continues to occupy the same volume with the same density. It does not circulate in a way that can be perceived. There is no sense of movement within it, and no signal of change. It supports the environment without asserting itself, maintaining equilibrium without interruption. Light remains evenly distributed. It does not brighten or dim, and it does not cast emphasis on any surface. There are no gradients or transitions. Illumination remains neutral, allowing all elements to remain equally present without distinction. No sound emerges to mark progression. The underlying ambient presence does not shift or vary. It does not form rhythm or pattern. It exists as a steady condition, consistent and uninterrupted, offering no indication of passage or development. The space does not respond to continued awareness. It neither adapts nor resists. There is no sense of engagement or withdrawal. The environment exists independently of observation, maintaining its state regardless of attention. No boundaries assert themselves more strongly over time. The structure does not reveal layers or depth. There is no suggestion of direction or movement. The environment remains evenly distributed in all directions, without focal points or edges. The absence of change persists. Nothing accumulates. Nothing dissipates. The environment does not progress toward an outcome, nor does it return to a previous state. It remains suspended in a consistent condition. Awareness does not influence the space. The environment does not react, respond, or adjust. It continues as it is, without modification or intent. The continuity holds. The space remains intact, unaltered by duration or attention. No transition emerges. No conclusion forms. The state persists without interruption. The environment does not accumulate detail over time. Prolonged presence does not result in familiarity, nor does it produce variation. The space remains consistent regardless of duration. There is no gradual shift, no subtle alteration that marks the passage of moments. Everything that exists remains in the same state it has always occupied. The surfaces retain their uniform character. They do not register wear, nor do they display change. Their presence is not reinforced by repetition. They simply remain, unchanged and unaffected. No part of the environment becomes more defined than another. There is no emphasis, no hierarchy, no progression of form. The air maintains its stability without interruption. It does not fluctuate in density or temperature. There is no sensation of movement, no trace of circulation. It supports the continuity of the space without drawing attention to itself. Its role remains constant, sustaining the environment without alteration. Sound, if present, does not evolve. It does not build or recede. It does not introduce variation or rhythm. It exists only as a steady condition, indistinguishable from the environment that contains it. There is no point at which sound becomes noticeable or fades away. It remains uniform and uninterrupted. The space does not respond to prolonged observation. It does not change when observed, nor does it alter itself when attention drifts. There is no feedback loop between awareness and environment. The condition remains fixed, independent of perception. There is no sense of sequence within the space. One moment does not differ from the next. Time does not appear to move forward or backward. The environment does not suggest continuity or interruption. It exists in a sustained state that resists segmentation. The structure does not present depth or layering. There is no foreground or background. All elements occupy the same plane of presence. Nothing recedes, and nothing advances. The environment remains evenly distributed, without emphasis or direction. The absence of variation persists. No feature becomes prominent. No element withdraws. The space does not evolve, and it does not degrade. It remains in equilibrium, unaltered by duration or attention. The surrounding condition maintains its form without deviation. There is no build-up, no resolution, and no transition. The environment does not indicate purpose or trajectory. It continues as it is, neither initiating change nor responding to it. The stability of the space is uninterrupted. There is no event that marks a shift. The environment remains constant, unaffected by the passage of time or the presence of observation. It holds its state without effort or interruption. The continuity remains intact. The space does not lead elsewhere, and it does not conclude. It persists as a single, unbroken condition, extending without reference to beginning or end. The environment maintains its uniform state without deviation. No new qualities emerge as time continues. The space does not reveal layers or transitions. It remains fixed in its arrangement, unaffected by duration or observation. The absence of change is not a condition to be interpreted, it is simply the way the environment exists. There is no accumulation of detail. Nothing becomes more pronounced or more distant. The boundaries do not soften or sharpen. They hold their position without asserting presence. The environment offers no points of reference, no variation that could suggest movement or direction. The air remains steady, unchanged in density or motion. It neither presses nor recedes. It does not signal movement or stillness. Its presence is neutral, sustaining the space without contributing sensation or texture. Nothing in the air draws attention or creates distinction. The surrounding structure continues without response. It does not react to prolonged exposure. It does not adapt or recalibrate. The environment remains identical to itself, moment after moment, without deviation or adjustment. Time does not reveal progression. It does not accumulate or dissolve. There is no indication that one moment replaces another. The environment does not register duration. It exists without reference to before or after. The space does not guide perception. It does not invite focus or encourage disengagement. It remains indifferent to awareness, neither acknowledging nor resisting it. The condition persists without alteration, stable and uninterrupted. No transition occurs. No boundary is crossed. The environment does not change state. It remains exactly as it is, sustaining continuity without direction or conclusion. The environment continues without variation. No element asserts itself more strongly than another. The space does not respond to duration, and it does not register the passage of time. Nothing within it changes position or quality. The conditions remain stable, undisturbed by continued presence. There is no distinction between foreground and background. All elements exist on the same level of awareness. Nothing emerges, and nothing recedes. The environment maintains a consistent state that does not invite interpretation or adjustment. The air remains evenly distributed. It does not move in a way that can be followed. There is no current, no pressure, no directional shift. Its presence is constant, supporting the environment without introducing sensation. The surfaces do not reflect change. They do not absorb light differently over time. They remain uniform, without texture or emphasis. The environment offers no variation that might suggest movement or development. Sound, if present, does not fluctuate. It does not form rhythm or pattern. It does not intensify or diminish. It exists as a steady condition, integrated into the space rather than imposed upon it. The environment does not react to continued awareness. It does not acknowledge observation or respond to attention. It remains unaffected, maintaining its state without interruption or adjustment. There is no indication of transition. The space does not lead toward another state or return from one. It exists as a constant, neither progressing nor retreating. The absence of change remains consistent throughout. The structure does not reveal layers or depth. It does not offer points of reference. All elements remain equal in presence and importance. Nothing becomes prominent, and nothing fades into obscurity. The environment persists without variance. There is no signal of movement or rest. It holds its form without effort, unaffected by time or perception. The space remains as it is. No transformation occurs. No conclusion approaches. The condition continues, uninterrupted and complete. The maintained condition does not intensify with time. It does not become more apparent, and it does not fade. The environment remains evenly sustained, holding the same balance between structure and absence without adjustment. Nothing accumulates. Nothing resolves. The space persists without introducing difference. There is no progression within the environment. No element shifts into prominence. No surface changes in a way that can be registered. The space does not guide attention forward or backward. It does not suggest movement or stillness as separate states. Both remain implied without contrast, existing within the same stable condition. The air remains regulated and neutral. It does not circulate with intention. It does not create sensation beyond equilibrium. Temperature remains constant, neither cooling nor warming. No current forms. No pressure changes. The air supports the environment without becoming a feature of it. Light continues without fluctuation. It does not brighten or dim, and it does not shift in tone. No shadows move. No reflections develop emphasis. Illumination remains even, allowing all surfaces to remain visible without directing focus. The visual field stays stable, undisturbed by change. Sound remains integrated without pattern. It does not form rhythm. It does not rise or fall. If present, it remains constant, embedded within the environment rather than layered above it. There is no sense of approach or departure. No moment announces itself as different from another. The structure does not separate itself into sections. There is no sense of distance becoming nearer or farther. Boundaries remain consistent without sharpening or softening. The space does not present markers that would indicate duration. It remains uniform, allowing time to dissolve into continuity. The environment does not respond to observation. It does not shift under attention, and it does not withdraw when awareness softens. There is no feedback between perception and space. The maintained condition continues independently, stable whether noticed or ignored. Nothing within the space suggests purpose. There is no implication of function beyond continuation. No element indicates readiness, completion, or transition. The environment does not communicate or conceal. It simply remains, sustaining its condition without interruption. The longer the environment persists, the less it distinguishes itself as an object. It becomes a background condition rather than something to be examined. Awareness does not need to hold detail. There is no benefit to selecting one feature over another. The space remains neutral, allowing perception to remain diffuse. Time does not present itself in stages. Moments do not separate cleanly. Earlier and later lose distinction. Duration becomes unmeasured, and the idea of waiting dissolves. The environment does not move toward an outcome. It does not resolve into an ending. It does not suggest a beginning. The space remains without orientation or endpoint. Surfaces remain consistent in tone and texture. No detail becomes clearer through repetition. No edge becomes more defined. The structure maintains itself without hierarchy. There is no center and no periphery. The environment remains evenly distributed, unchanged in all directions. The air continues its equilibrium without forming sensation. It does not invite awareness. It does not resist it. It remains present as a stable condition, supporting continuity without contributing variation. Nothing in the air draws attention or creates distinction. Light remains stable without emphasis. It does not reveal depth. It does not introduce contrast. Illumination continues as a neutral condition, allowing the environment to remain visible without directing focus. Sound continues without contour. It does not develop rhythm or cycle. It does not indicate mechanical change or human activity. It remains constant, integrated into the environment as a steady layer. Its steadiness allows it to fade from active notice without disappearing. The environment does not register duration. It does not react to being present for longer. There is no point at which the space becomes more familiar or more distant. It remains identical to itself, moment after moment, without deviation. The maintained condition does not drift. Nothing gradually shifts. Nothing subtly transforms. There is no gradual change detectable through patience or attention. The space remains stable, sustaining the same configuration without alteration. Awareness does not need to resolve anything. There is no transition to anticipate. No conclusion forms. The environment persists without instruction, without demand, and without response. Perception can remain without effort, resting within a condition that does not change. The environment continues as it is. Unaltered. Uninterrupted. There is no signal that anything is approaching. No sign that anything has passed. The space remains stable, complete, and continuous, holding its state without direction or end. The maintained condition does not become clearer through repetition. It does not sharpen into definition. The environment remains consistent, offering no additional clarity and no reduction of presence. Nothing within the space becomes more meaningful. Nothing becomes less. The balance holds without adjustment. There is no internal reference point that separates one moment from another. The environment does not present cues that would allow awareness to measure duration. No sequence forms. No stage is reached. The space continues without acknowledging continuity, remaining in the same stable configuration without transition. Surfaces remain uniform without emphasis. They do not invite attention through detail or variation. Their persistence is steady, unchanged by observation. The structure does not shift toward prominence. It remains evenly present, without hierarchy or contrast. The air continues to support equilibrium without introducing sensation. It does not move with intention. It does not signal change through temperature or pressure. It remains neutral, sustaining the environment without becoming a feature of experience. Light remains unchanged, neither dimming nor brightening. It does not suggest depth or distance. Illumination continues as a constant condition, allowing the environment to remain visible without directing focus or implying movement. Sound remains constant if present, without rhythm or pattern. It does not develop cycles. It does not draw nearer or fade away. It remains integrated into the environment as a steady layer, unchanging and uninterrupted. The environment does not move toward resolution. No conclusion forms. No transition approaches. The space persists exactly as it is, stable and continuous, allowing perception to remain without effort, without expectation, and without the need to resolve anything. The environment continues without alteration. There is no indication that time has advanced, and no sign that it has remained still. The space exists in a condition where such distinctions do not apply. Nothing marks progression, and nothing suggests return. The state remains uninterrupted. No element within the environment asserts dominance. Surfaces do not shift in prominence. Their presence is equal, consistent, and unchanging. There is no hierarchy, no contrast that would suggest focus or direction. Everything remains evenly distributed. The air sustains its neutral state. It does not circulate in a way that produces sensation. There is no current to follow, no movement to track. It maintains equilibrium without variation, supporting the environment without becoming noticeable. Light remains constant. It does not brighten or recede. It does not indicate depth or distance. Illumination persists as a stable condition, allowing visibility without directing attention. Nothing within the space draws the eye more than anything else. Sound, if present, holds the same quality as before. It does not fluctuate or introduce rhythm. There is no build, no decay, no shift in tone. It remains embedded within the environment, indistinguishable from the surrounding state. The structure shows no sign of change. Surfaces do not wear or adapt. No edges soften. No lines sharpen. The environment resists transformation, maintaining the same configuration regardless of duration or observation. The space does not respond to awareness. It neither reacts nor withdraws. It does not acknowledge being perceived. It remains fixed, maintaining continuity without interruption or reaction. There is no sense of movement forward or backward. The environment does not suggest progression or regression. It does not imply direction. It remains suspended in a condition that does not evolve. The absence of variation persists. Nothing accumulates. Nothing dissolves. The environment does not grow more familiar, nor does it become distant. It holds the same presence throughout, unchanged and stable. Time does not assert itself. There is no awareness of passing moments. The environment does not register duration. It exists outside of sequence, without markers or transitions. The condition remains intact. No element introduces change. No detail emerges to alter perception. The space continues in a steady, uninterrupted state, maintaining continuity without movement or conclusion. The maintained condition remains evenly sustained. Nothing in the environment gathers emphasis, and nothing recedes into absence. The space does not respond to duration. It does not become more defined through repetition, and it does not fade through familiarity. The state remains constant, unchanged by continued awareness. Surfaces continue without variation in texture or tone. No detail becomes clearer with time. No boundary asserts itself through contrast. The structure does not separate into sections that would suggest sequence. Everything remains uniform, stable, and unremarkable, maintaining the same relation to the space around it. The air remains regulated and neutral. It does not shift in temperature. It does not change in density. There is no sensation that suggests flow or pressure. It supports equilibrium without forming a perceptible event. Nothing within the environment reacts to it, and it does not introduce movement into the experience. Light continues without fluctuation. It does not alter in brightness or color. Shadows do not shift. Reflections do not develop emphasis. Illumination persists as a stable condition that maintains visibility without directing attention. The visual field remains consistent, offering no cue of depth, distance, or transition. Sound, if present, remains constant and indistinct. It does not rise or fall. It does not form rhythm. It does not suggest activity or rest. It exists as a steady layer, integrated into the environment without drawing focus. There is no point at which it becomes more noticeable. There is no point at which it fades. It remains unchanged. The environment does not imply direction. There is no forward movement to follow and no backward movement to return to. The space does not suggest an endpoint. It does not frame itself as a passage. It exists as a maintained state rather than a route, remaining neutral in all orientations. Time remains without markers. The environment does not separate moments into stages. Earlier and later do not form distinct boundaries. Duration becomes diffuse, and the idea of progression loses relevance. The space continues without acknowledging continuity or change. The maintained systems, whether visible or implied, do not signal cycles. There is no rise or fall to track. No pattern becomes apparent. Nothing suggests that processes begin or complete. The environment remains supported without announcing purpose, maintaining stability without transition. Awareness does not need to hold detail. There is no benefit in focusing on one aspect over another. The environment does not reward attention and does not punish drift. It remains consistent whether perception is sharp or softened. Nothing changes as focus moves or settles. The structure does not reveal depth through prolonged observation. It does not develop layers. There is no accumulation of meaning. The environment remains identical to itself, moment after moment, without deviation. It does not become more familiar. It does not become more distant. It simply persists. The condition does not move toward resolution. No conclusion forms. No transition approaches. The space remains intact, stable and continuous, unaffected by duration or observation. Nothing within it suggests that something has ended or that something will begin. The maintained state continues without interruption, holding equilibrium without direction or conclusion. The maintained condition does not shift as time continues. The environment does not become quieter in a way that can be measured, and it does not become more active. It remains in the same stable configuration, holding its balance without adjustment. Nothing within the space suggests that change is approaching. Nothing suggests that anything has already changed. Surfaces remain uniform and unchanged. They do not register duration through variation. No detail becomes clearer or less distinct. Boundaries do not sharpen. They do not soften. The structure remains consistent, offering no internal reference points that would allow awareness to measure distance or time. The space does not provide markers. It remains continuous without segmentation. The air continues its neutral equilibrium. It does not drift toward warmth or coolness. It does not move in a way that draws attention. There is no sensation of circulation. The atmosphere supports the environment without contributing texture to experience. Nothing in the air invites awareness, and nothing in the air resists it. It remains present without requiring recognition. Light remains steady. It does not introduce emphasis through brightness or shadow. It does not suggest depth or direction. Illumination continues as a constant condition, holding visibility in place while allowing attention to soften. There is no gradient to follow. No change in tone or intensity suggests passage. The visual field remains stable, consistent, and undisturbed. Sound remains, if present, without forming pattern. It does not develop rhythm or cycle. It does not indicate mechanical processes completing or beginning. It does not swell or fade. It remains integrated, constant enough to be ignored and present enough to prevent silence from becoming distinct. Nothing interrupts it. Nothing replaces it. The environment does not respond to prolonged awareness. It does not adapt or recalibrate. There is no feedback between observation and the state of the space. The maintained condition persists independently. Whether attention remains focused or diffuse, the environment remains unchanged. Nothing in the space acknowledges being perceived. Time does not present itself as progression. Moments do not separate into stages. Earlier and later remain indistinct. The environment does not imply sequence. It continues without internal cues that would suggest movement toward conclusion or renewal. There is no transition to anticipate. No resolution forms. The space does not suggest an endpoint. It does not frame itself as something to leave or complete. It exists as a maintained environment, sustaining itself without direction. Awareness does not need to orient forward or backward. The concept of approach or departure loses relevance. The environment remains stable in all orientations. Nothing within the space becomes more meaningful through duration. No layer forms. No emphasis emerges. The maintained condition does not accumulate significance. It remains neutral, steady, and uninterrupted. The space continues as it is, holding its configuration without deviation, without conclusion, and without the need to resolve anything. The environment continues without deviation. No shift announces itself, and no change accumulates beneath the surface. The state remains uniform, holding the same configuration it has maintained throughout. Nothing signals transition. Nothing suggests completion. The space does not reorganize. It does not respond to the passage of time or the presence of awareness. There is no internal adjustment, no recalibration. The environment remains fixed in its condition, neither advancing nor receding. Surfaces hold their form without alteration. They do not sharpen or soften. They do not gain or lose definition. The space does not develop features that draw attention or dissolve into the background. Everything remains evenly distributed, without hierarchy or emphasis. The air continues in equilibrium. It does not circulate with intention. It does not carry sensation or signal change. Its presence is constant, unremarkable, and unchanging. It sustains the environment without becoming a point of focus. Sound, if present, remains steady and indistinct. It does not fluctuate or evolve. It does not form rhythm or variation. It exists as a persistent layer that neither intrudes nor recedes. Nothing in it indicates movement or transformation. The environment does not respond to duration. It does not recognize the passage of time. No accumulation of moments alters its condition. It does not approach a conclusion or recede into origin. The state remains fixed, unaltered by continuation. There is no threshold to cross. No transition marks a change. The space remains consistent, without markers or boundaries. It does not guide attention or suggest progression. The environment exists as a continuous condition, sustained without interruption. The structure does not convey depth or direction. It does not present planes or levels. Everything exists on equal footing, without foreground or background. Nothing stands apart. Nothing withdraws. The maintained state does not invite interpretation. It does not suggest meaning or purpose. It simply persists. Awareness does not need to engage or withdraw. The environment remains as it is, unaffected by observation. The condition holds. Nothing shifts. Nothing concludes. Nothing begins. The space continues, unchanged, sustaining its presence without resolution. The environment does not shift in response to duration. It remains stable regardless of how long it is observed. There is no accumulation of presence, no layering of experience. The space holds its condition without alteration, unaffected by attention or absence. Nothing within the environment asserts significance. No surface becomes more prominent through repetition. No feature emerges through continued exposure. The structure does not reveal hidden complexity or evolving form. It remains exactly as it is, unchanged by time or perception. The air remains evenly distributed, without movement or disturbance. It does not carry warmth or coolness. It does not respond to proximity or distance. Its presence is neutral, supporting the space without becoming perceptible as a separate element. Light continues without variation. It does not fluctuate or pulse. It does not suggest direction, distance, or depth. Illumination holds steady, allowing the environment to remain visible without emphasizing any part of it. Nothing within the visual field draws focus or invites inspection. Sound, if present, maintains a constant presence. It does not rise or fall. It does not mark intervals or signal change. It does not form a pattern or rhythm. It remains integrated into the environment, neither foreground nor background, simply present. The environment does not respond to observation. It does not shift in reaction to attention. There is no feedback loop between awareness and space. The conditions remain fixed, regardless of how long they are observed or ignored. Time does not present itself as progression. Moments do not accumulate. There is no sense of before or after. The space does not move toward an outcome or away from one. It remains suspended in the same state, unchanged by duration. The structure does not indicate boundaries or transitions. There is no threshold to cross. The space does not suggest movement from one state to another. It exists as a continuous condition without division or sequence. Nothing within the environment becomes more defined through repetition. No detail sharpens or fades. The consistency remains absolute. The space does not reveal hidden aspects or layered meanings. It maintains the same presence without alteration. The condition persists without interruption. It does not react to time, and it does not anticipate change. There is no culmination or closure. The environment remains exactly as it is, steady and uninterrupted.